I will share the screen.
Good evening, all. So, shall we? Everyone can see the screen is centered. So, I'll
Yes.
start. Okay, I would like to thank you, Dr. Shanti, for giving this opportunity. So, maybe I'll finish this presentation within 20 minutes. Then, next speaker will talk about the behavior management in details. Then, at the end, we will take the questions. Okay. So, as Dr. Shanti said, we are going to focus on how to manage behavioral problems in special needs.
Yes.
Okay, I would like to thank you, Dr. Shanti, for giving this opportunity. So,
Why that echo is
presentation within 20 minutes, and next speaker will talk about.
I think whatever I talk, it's echoing, no? Why it is happening?
So, as Dr. Shanti said, we are going to focus on how to manage behavioral problems.
Dr. Shanti?
Yes.
Okay, I would like to thank you, Dr. Shanti, for giving this opportunity. So, why the echo?
Okay, now. Okay. Well, what is the aim of this presentation? Mainly to understand the various terms used by professionals, then to understand the etiology and the management of behavioral difficulties. Because we all know that when we are living with the special needs kids, the behavioral difficulties are the most common problem to deal with it for the parents as well as to the professionals. So when we look at the prevalence, which means like how common it is, just to understand. One of the studies showed that nearly 70 to 86% of the high functioning autistic children are having behavioral problems. You all know that what is high functioning autistic children? That means they're functionally doing well, but still they have that autistic features. So even for them, if it is nearly more than 80%, but if there are low functioning kids, like the children, autistic kids with intellectual disability kids, most of them, nearly 100% of them will have this behavioral problem. I'm sure the parents would have experienced this. Then even another study showed that it's not only one behavioral problem, it is usually multiple, like 4 or more. So this is very common. So what is challenging behavior? So any abnormal pattern of behavior which is above the expected norm for age and level of the child's development can be described as challenging behavior. It can affect the physical safety of the person or others. Then they'll put them in danger because they are hurting themselves or they're throwing things. So they're putting others, including themselves, in danger. So that is called as challenging behavior. So what are the common problems? Mainly, you would have noticed that mainly that screaming, anger, like some people, they'll be very restless and wandering or just running away. They want to run in the open space. Then adamant behavior, self-injurious behavior, sexual related behavior like inappropriate touching, or self-stimulation, then sleep difficulties, sensory difficulties, feeding difficulties, obsession, stereotyped movements, enuresis and encopresis. What is enuresis? It is urinating somewhere which is not supposed to be. Like when the child gets upset, to get the attention seeking, they may urinate somewhere else. It happens very rarely, but still it is also part of the behavioral problem. Then what is encopresis? Similar to urination, this is defecation, like passing a stool in somewhere else when they get anger or when they are sensitive with something. So what is the causes of challenging behavior? Most of the time when we look at the cause, it would be an expression of their communication. It's a sign of they wanted to say something like, I'm upset, I'm angry, you're not looking at me. So that's why I'm showing this kind of the behavior. Because the children with special needs, they can't express everything what they want. So they express it in a way that kind of challenging behavior. Then sometimes it could be due to physical illness, like simple dental abscess or fever, or they feel tummy ache or something. They don't know what to say. Then it can be expressed as physical illness. Then sometimes it could be a learned behavior, like if they want something, if they throw a tantrum or if they throw things, if you give it, then they will learn it. Okay, if I cry loud, then I will get it from my mom. So it could be a learned behavior. Then environmental changes. If they miss one of the carer, like parents or the grandparents or school friends, they can't understand why they have taken the leave or why are they absent. So it could be due to environmental changes. During this COVID, I had a few cases like when the child's dad is quarantined. The child knows that the dad is at home, but why he couldn't come out of the room, so he can't understand. So it turned into severe self-injurious behavior, like scratching his face. It was literally bleeding. So but it's typically that environmental changes. I tried all these behavioral strategies, but for 1 week it didn't work. But somehow we managed to take him out for a walk. Then also I had to start the medication for that thing as well. Then finally the behavior just completely stopped as soon as the father came out of the quarantine. So the environmental changes plays an important role in challenging behavior. It's quite easy to treat as well. Then sensory seeking behavior. Sometimes they want to get that kind of sensation, so that they will repeatedly do this. Then restricted interest, like rubbing against the wall and all. Sometimes it can be sensory needs, or it can be restricted interest. Then attention seeking behavior. If you don't talk to them, they will try to do something. Then sometimes it could be part of the puberty changes, mainly anger and aggression and all. It could be due to hormonal changes. Then obviously, if you don't practice the poor sleep hygiene, it could be the sleep difficulties. Then general treatment is, we try to find out the cause. If we find out the cause, then try to remove it. Like if it is due to environmental causes, or if it is due to sensory needs, we are trying to focus on how we can treat it. Then sometimes we may have to use the medications like antipsychotics or anxiolytics, but medication is not the first line of treatment. We try the behavioral treatment and all. Then at last we may have to use this. Then obviously, mainly the parenting counseling. If the child is able to understand the situation, if the child's intellectual ability is good, then we could do the individual counseling as well. Then obviously behavioral therapy, we are going to discuss it in detail. Just a short brief note about this behavioral therapy. I think everywhere they're talking about this ABC approach, then or ABA therapy. What is it? That is an applied behavioral analysis therapy. So it just generally focus on three things. A means which is antecedent, B means behavior, C means consequence. I'll give you an example to understand. For example, if you ask the child to tidy up the toys after playing, the child refused to do that. The child started throwing all the toys over the living room or somewhere. In that aspect, the antecedent is, the parent is asking the child, there is a trigger, no, that is the parent is asking the child to do something, that is antecedent. The behavior is because the child is throwing toys all over the place, that is behavior. Then we need to, first thing, we need to understand the trigger. We got it. The behavior is, this is what the child is doing. Then the consequence means, if the child does this behavior, we have to teach the child to have some consequence. But that consequence can be positive reinforcement or punishment, or just simply ignore the child. For example, in this example, if the child doesn't if the child refuses to do the tidy up, maybe if the intellectual ability is fine, you can ask the child for the to sit somewhere else, like time out, or that is the punishment. Or sometimes if you tell the child, I'm going to count number 1 to 5, before 5, if you tidy up, then I'll give you the star. That is the positive reinforcement consequence. But sometimes, especially the children with special needs, if they can't understand it, those kind of explanation, what do? We will just ignore it, because sometimes most of the children with special needs, they can't understand what are we doing. So in that situation, these kind of unwanted behavior, sometimes if we ignore it, if we don't react to that, slowly they will reduce that behavior. So that is the consequence. So every behavior, we have to develop some consequence. We need to learn it from the ABC approach. So this is the basic principle. Coming to the self-injurious behavior, usually when compared to other behavioral issues, this sensory difficulties and the self-injurious behaviors are more common in autistic kids. So it's most of the time it is due to reflection of emotional distress. Then mainly head banging, hand biting, nail biting, self-rubbing or scratching. What do we do? Again, we do the functional analysis. It is more like ABC only. What do we do? Functional analysis means we are thinking, you try to look at the pattern of this behavior. Sometimes if we observe the child for a longer period, we will be able to find out the pattern. Based on the pattern, we'll be able to identify the cause, so that we know that if the child is hungry, the child is biting his nail, something kind of we will be able to understand, so that we can fulfill the child's need, we can treat it. Then sometimes it could be due to frustration or self-stimulation. Sometimes when they bite themselves, when they hurt themselves, they get self-stimulation, like what they do in self-harming for the teenagers. So we need to differentiate whether it is due to frustration or whether it is due to self-stimulation. Then we can treat them. Then some studies have shown that there is some chemical imbalance in self-injurious behavior. Like endorphin level and the high dopamine level and the low calcium or serotonin level. This is how sometimes when we use medications, it may work, because many studies have shown that there is some chemical imbalance. But it doesn't mean that every time when the child comes to you with the self-injurious behavior, we need to do some test or we have to start the medication. No, the medication is very, very last option. Mostly the behavioral therapy is the treatment. Then sometimes it could be due to absent seizures activity. Sometimes the neurologist can do the EEG and we can check it. So the treatment is basically, if we are able to find out the cause, we need to treat it. Then the behavior modification. The diet modification, if you identify the self-injurious behavior is related with some diet intake. Normally what would happen if the child is already having some irritable bowel syndrome or some kind of gastric symptoms, like allergic to lactose and a lot of allergic to other things, gluten allergy and all. If we find out if the child is allergic to some food, as soon as the child is taking that food, maybe the child is having the kind of symptoms like tummy pain or some discomfort. So the child doesn't know how to express it, so it can be expressed as self-injurious behavior. It doesn't mean that definitely some diet can cause self-injurious behavior. Okay, it is associated with some gastric problem. Then adamant behavior, we all know that it's a common complaint from parents, usually due to inconsistency of following rules and difference of opinion from caregivers, because mom will say one thing, dad will say one thing, or grandparents will say something. So the child will learn, this is what I needed. Okay. So normally usual strategies, we need to stay calm when the child shows the adamant behavior. We have to be strict with the rule. Depending on the intellectual ability of the child, when we try to explain it, the child will understand. Otherwise, sometimes if we ignore it or distract them, it can be easily controlled when we work together from the beginning. But each carer, whoever is in the family, we all have to follow the same kind of approach. Then definitely we can change this behavior. And also, if the child stops that behavior, we need to learn how to praise the child as well, like reward and all. Then the sensory difficulties, nearly 76% of the autistic kids have sensory difficulties. Like, for example, they don't touch that particular texture or food or taste, smell, sound. You all heard that kind of, most of the kids are they don't tolerate the noise from the mixie or the cooker whistle or the firecracker sounds. So then some kids, they want it to be naked, whatever the clothes you're trying, they don't want to put it when they are at home. These are all due to sensory difficulties. And sometimes the limitation of the diet, that is also main issues. They can't choose certain types of food, like hard foods like chapati and all. The treatment, we have to reduce the sensory stimulation by avoiding it or desensitizing it. Avoiding it means if the child is sensitive to cooker whistle or something, what we can do, we can expose, because every day we have to use the cooker, isn't it? So we can take the child for a minute to the kitchen, then just stay for it, then just come back. Then slowly we can increase the time. That is called a desensitization. Like from 30 seconds to 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, slowly we can reduce it. That is desensitizing. So we are exposing the child to that particular stimuli, so that we are making the child to be desensitized. Avoiding means sometimes whatever you try, if the child can't tolerate the noise, especially when, some of the autistic kids, when they come out, they can't tolerate that crowd noise, especially when we go in the crowd. So we may have to use earplug or some kind of headphone to reduce the noise. So that is reduce the sensory stimulation. Then sleep difficulties, another common issues. It can be termed as difficulty in difficulty in sleep, insomnia, or nightmares. Sometimes the young kids have some nightmares, so suddenly they woke up and cried. They can't even express it. Then the sleepwalking as well. So obviously we have to follow the sleep hygiene first. But then, if the sleep hygiene doesn't work, there are medications available. The first line is melatonin syrup. Then the second one is the antipsychotic medication. So the good sleep hygiene, I'm sure everyone would have heard about it. Just to recap, we have to follow the regular bedtime, not only for the children, the whole family should follow it. Then only the special needs kids will follow our regular bedtime. Then no screen 1 hour before sleeping time. Then obviously if there are elderly kids, we can do exercise, or if the hyperactivity child, we can make the child to like drain their energy, then so that they can be tired, or listening to music. Sometimes they can take warm bath and relaxation techniques, or massage. Then healthy dinner and balanced drink. Then obviously for the teenagers, that caffeine and alcohol, nicotine should be avoided. But then obviously the stressful activities to be avoided. If you ask the child to do some activities and at 10 o'clock before we go to bed, if you want the child to finish the homework, obviously if the child is having writing difficulty, if you ask the child to write something before he goes to bed, obviously it could be a stressful activity, so we should avoid it. Then obviously we have to give a kind of comfortable room, like dark, quiet and cool environment. These are all the basic sleep hygiene techniques. Then another problem is the feeding problem. It can be part of the sensory issues. Some child, they can fail to thrive, or they can refuse particular type of food, or sometimes excessive fuzziness, they don't eat. So generally, it's a kind of the challenge for everyone. But general concept is when we try to introduce whatever the types of food we use it at home, then usually they will accept it. But if we don't use it for a longer time, then it will be a problem. Even if the child, most of the time in my clinical experience, what will happen? The child will not eat any hard food like chapati, something like that. Or sometimes they don't touch the gravy, like kind of sticky one. They don't eat, they eat only chapati or plain rice or something, or plain bread or whatever. So they don't like sauce or gravy kind of things. So we have to, if the child doesn't like it, still we have to little bit dip into the gravy or sauce. We have to make the child to eat rather than putting too much. So when we try to do it from the beginning, like 9 months, 10 months onwards, the child get used to the taste, so it wouldn't be a problem. But some kids, a couple of parents told me that, doctor, we tried everything, doctor, it is not working. But maybe it could be due to the severity of that kind of the sensory issue. So we have to try step-by-step approach only. Then we can ask for occupational therapist advice as well. Then we can involve dietitian as well, because sometimes brushing their mouth or massaging can helpful to reduce that kind of feeding issues. Then the sexual behavior, it is not very common, but at the same time, it is not rare. Generally, the masturbation, especially the teenage kids, they do masturbation. Then or they touch other private parts, or they watch pornography, or sometimes they expose the genitalia. What is the causes? They are getting self-stimuli. Then another reason is maybe we need to rule out whether the child is abused. So if you find out the child is doing some kind of the inappropriate sexual behavior, we need to look for option. Anybody is misusing that, abusing the child, because it can happen. Because bad if the child learn from it. Most of the time, not most of the time, sometimes it can be due to abuse. Sometimes the child would have watched something from the video automatically, the child tried to do it, then becomes like a habit. Or very rarely, I think in my clinical experience, I heard just 20 months old girl child. There was the girl child started talking in small simple sentences, but still there is no way to show the video, or none of them are showing it. But somehow the child wants to rub her private parts against the wall. But if mother says that you can't do it, the child doesn't do it. If mother is not there, the child will go and do it. So the child learned it. How did the child learn it? No one knows. But usually what I feel maybe accidentally she would have touched a private parts, then she would have got that stimulation. Since then, the child wanted to do. So sometimes it could be due to the habit. So we need to watch it, but make sure when the child does it initially, we need to stop it. Okay, but some of the teenage kids know, like 16, 17, like we can't ask them to stop because it's a kind of the natural puberty, part of the puberty growth. So if the child is able to understand, we can teach them. You're not allowed to do it like outside or in the public place. You have to do it limited time, like once or twice only in the private room. So we can teach them because we can't completely stop them, especially the severe intellectual disability kids. They can't understand. They tend to do it. So at least we can teach them. You can do it at the particular time in a private room. Um, So not much role for medication. Again, we need to follow this behavioral strategies only. Then sometimes behavioral problems could be due to their anxiety level. Nearly 56 to 84% of the autistic kids have showed that anxiety symptoms. Anxiety can be social anxiety, separation anxiety, or specific phobia. Social means usually most of the autistic kids, they have lack of social skills. So when they are exposed to the social situation, they'll have that kind of social anxiety. Then when they are separated from their parents or caregivers, they have that separation anxiety. They may have specific phobia to particular place or particular item. It is more common in teenage older kids. So obviously we need to change the environment, change in routine. The unfamiliar social situation have to be desensitized. The management is depending on their understanding level and the parents' support. Usually, if they are anxious, if we give massage or the relaxation therapy, then they will be fine. Sometimes we could use the social stories. Their understanding is partial. We could make a visual pictures. Then you could tell the story. This is what the child is feeling. This is what the child is expressing, so that the child can connect from the visual stories. They can do it. Then the graded exposure. Like if the child doesn't want to go to school, we will send them to the group play for initially for a few minutes. Then after that for 10 minutes, 20 minutes. So we can expose the child to that kind of anxiety situation. Shorter time, then longer time, slowly step by step approach we can approach them. Then visual techniques, like we are creating the visual chart and we are teaching them. Then the picture schedules and photographs are the same. Then some of the kids, they may need medication, mainly the older kids. Then the CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, it's mainly for higher functioning kids. It is not applicable for lower functioning kids, because when we explain the CBT, they should be able to understand what is the concept. The separation anxiety, it is very common. It is part of the normal development. It appears in 8 months to 12 months old babies. But maybe children with special needs, it can be happened maybe later because their development is delayed. Because we can easily identify as soon as the parents or caregivers leave the child gets anxious, then the child shows all the temper tantrum. So if we identify the reason, identify the cause, we can easily treat it. But it doesn't mean that the parents can stay with the child, because anyway the parents have to go to work, the parents have to go to the other room and do all these things, because most of the time the child is not allowing the mom or father to even moving to the next room. This is what I commonly get it from a clinical practice. So what do we do for this? We need to, whatever the child cries, we need to make the child to adapt to the situation. We have to make the child to learn. Even though mom is not there, you're crying, but at one point mom will come back. So you can leave the child, someone can take care of the baby or the child. Then next time when the mom comes, if the episodes happens regularly, after a few times, definitely the child will understand, mom will come after some time. So sometimes we need to distract the child if the child is very young. Then sometimes challenging behaviors can be a sign of depression, because they can't express their feeling. We need to find out the reason, like whether are they missing someone or whether they're bullied, because these kids are very targeted for bullying as well. So we have to find out whether is there any sign of depression, so that we can treat it. Some kids, they may need antidepressant. Again, the behavioral therapy is only for high functioning kids. Then sometimes it can be due to obsession. It is very common because the repetitive behaviors are one of the symptoms of autism. It can lead to obsessive compulsive disorder in later stage. Initially, when the child is obsessed with something, like hand wash or whatever they do, are obsessed with some kind of the toy, we need to break that obsession, that restricted interest. For example, the child is very obsessed with wheels of the toy. So maybe we have to remove the wheels toys for some time. It doesn't mean that we should always take the wheels. Sometimes we have to remove it. We give that other toys. Then after a few days we can give the toys so that we can distract it. We can limit that obsession. Then again, like deviation techniques and medications are available. The medication is the last option. The general management is we always look for the biopsychosocial model. The biology means whether we look for is there anything wrong in the body, like any physical problem or something. Then sometimes is there any physical like chemical imbalance like depression or obsession. So we have to treat it. Then psychological reason is if the child is missing someone, the child is upset, if the child is depressed, then we need to look into that. The social reason is like environmental changes, like the peer groups and family supports could help them. So generally, the children with special needs, rather than teaching the child, usually we talk a lot to the parents so that the parents can try those techniques at home. Then even in the school, they do have to implement those strategies to reduce especially the sensory difficulties and the regular behavior pattern like tantrum and all. So if everyone follows the same rule, the child will learn the good strategies. Generally, what kind of medication we use, especially here in India, no, sometimes the parents have to go to work because generally if the child is having behavioral problem, one-to-one, always the child needs someone to correct the problem because the behavioral therapy is based on we need to teach the parent how to look after the child. But sometimes, not even sometimes, most of the times parent can't stay with the child. They have to go to work or they have to finish the household work. So in that situation, especially the low income families, no, they can't afford like one-to-one care and all. So in that situation, we will end up in giving some medicine because at least the family should have a kind of a peaceful day. The child shouldn't be distressed because of these things. So for this reason, sometimes we could use, if the child is having hyperactivity, we could use that ADHD medication like methylphenidate, like Inspiral and Advice. Then non-stimulant drugs like atomoxetine, clonidine, or sometimes for short-term, generally antipsychotic drugs are allowed only for the short-term use, but but most of the time what would happen, the many kids are taking that antipsychotic medication for longer time because they don't have any other option, especially that severe severity is more, they don't have any other option. But even if the child is on medication, make sure the child should have the regular kind of the blood test like yearly once or ECG just to monitor the side effects, or the regular follow with the psychiatrist. Then obviously we use the melatonin for sleep and benzodiazepine. Is there any role in restriction of the diet? There is no direct evidence, but sometimes when the people says that, as I said already, if they already have some gastric problem, if they have allergic to some food, or if they have irritable bowel syndrome, then or lactose allergy and all those things, we can try to reduce that particular diet or avoid that particular kind of diet content. Then the child can get improved. So what is the golden rule? The child will be better than his previous state or not better than others. We need to understand, because we need to understand each child is unique. Each child's condition and the severity is varied, because the treatment will be effective based on their intellectual ability level and how much the parents can support the child. And sometimes the resource won't be available in many places. So remember, these are all the limitations. So try your best, don't get stressed. I think I have completed my presentation.